All right. Um, so I'm going to start just for everybody to have a orientation. There are many layers to get in, and somebody stops before the dura, other stops below the dura, and that's a tactical choice. The tonsils usually is the final prize if you want to be radical and you want to drop the nuke. And once you reach the tonsils, there are many things you can do. You can just touch them a little bit, dissect them a little bit. You can burn them, and you can burn some aspects of them, or just that hundreds of years ago, Leif Erikson was the son of Erik the Red, discovered America in the first place. So it's a kind of a timeline of Chiari surgery over the years. Everybody thinks was Gardner from the United States starting. Instead, there was a Danish guy who beat him by 20 years. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Dr. Williams and Dr. Batzdorf in the 80s were the pioneers who changed the game from a series of catastrophes with poor outcomes up to the 80s to they changed the game to a surgery which started becoming more and more reliable. Now, between 98 and 2001, Dr. Mirat and our group started exploring the extradural technique, and that was by accident. We found out that during the opening of the skull, we saw the SSCPs, which are intraoperative monitoring, were changing. So we asked ourselves, well, when do we stop here? We used it only for 3 years because then our post-surgical outcome, later on, was not really great. It was actually comparing to the post-op outcome of extradural techniques, which is just starting appearing in literature. So we abandoned it, and that was funny because at the same time, almost the same time, a few years afterwards, Dr. Felsen in Colombia, who was a pediatric neurosurgeon, started observing the same thing, that during the opening of the skull, the intraoperative monitoring was improving, and so he proposed it in a seminal article, and he spread like wildfire in the pediatric neurosurgery community because the dura in kids tends to be thinner than in adults, and so not to step into the series of complications of cerebrospinal fluid leakages was quite appealing. But the extradural technique and the intradural technique, they're not equivalent. Now, you cannot really compare pain in between patients. So the objective benchmark for measurement of a technique is the deflation of the syringomyelia cavity. So what is used as the gold standard to measure efficacy in Chiari surgery. So what has not been noted since the early 2000s was that the deflation rate of the syringomyelia cavities after the surgery changes with the different techniques. And it's 65% with the extradural. It is 85% with the techniques which open the dura and involve duroplasty, and then get even higher with an uncomplicated tonsil reduction. Now, Bob mentioned before about different studies having different case series, etc. And this indeed is a numbers game. So in 2017, we did a poll, and we polled all the surgeons which were involved in that meeting, which were about 85. But 63. There were 85 physicians who participated. Some were neurologists, but there were 63 neurosurgeons from 4 continents, all recognized experts in the field. Pulled together was 15,000 Chiari surgeries as a overall experience. So we asked them a number of questions, and one of the questions was, so what do you prefer, intradural or extradural technique? And 81% of them prefer the intradural technique as the go-to version. So we went to the top of the chain, and we asked, okay, so what do you guys, what are the top experts prefer? So the 8 neurosurgeons who had an experience of more the 600 cases, they all preferred intradural techniques. Are you still hearing me well?
All good.
All good so far. Okay, so I'm going back. Move this up and I continue. So all the people with more than 600 cases of experience, they were all preferring intradural technique. So from the 81% of the pollers in preferring intradural, all the top 600, so all the top 8 neurosurgeons with more than 600 cases prefer intradural as their go-to tool. Then we asked the 4 neurosurgeons who had an experience of more than 1,000 and change cases, and not only they prefer the intradural techniques, their go-to tool, but they also were doing aggressive tonsillar manipulation, so read tonsillar coagulation. What was noticed is their self-reported complication rate doing this very aggressive technique was actually comparable to the overall general extradural technique complication rate. So these are 7 of the 8 top scorers. You recognize most of them. So Dr. Betzel, Dr. Menezes, Dr. Frame, Dr. Rickate, Dr. Jerry Oakes, Dr. Oro, and Dr. Yong Liu is from Beijing. He's actually the guy who's done the most operation with 2,500 plus by the time of this poll in 2017. So what was the poll message? Extradural techniques were less effective, but they were less risk of complications. Intradural techniques were more effective, but they were having more risk of complications. And that has been reverberating on in all the recent papers in the course of the last 10 years. One thing that this poll was saying, which was unique, was that for people with intradural techniques, the more the experience, the lower the risk of complications. So an experience was an equalizing factor regarding the incidence of complications between the 2 techniques. So experience means that you have to practice a lot. So you cannot assume that the guy who starts doing the first surgery is going to have the same complication rate and the same execution as somebody who was at the top of the game. In this case, my favorite piano player, Yu Wang. But in the game of practicing, there is also the intrinsic fact that you're going to sweat over a long period of time, and you have to drill into yourself the concept of delayed gratification. So wax on, wax off. Everybody wants to win already a championship from the beginning, but who wants to put years and years of practice before doing that? So what's the wisdom of all that? Every single type of Chiari surgery does help, each and any one of them, from the easiest one with just removing a little bit of piece of bone to the most aggressive, which is opening the dura, opening the arachnoid, and even cutting the tonsils off. But what I notice over the years, because as you get more and more complex, you appreciate the fact that your surgery being more complex is more effective. I also realized that there is no ideal Chiari approach which should be done by everybody, by every surgeon. A surgeon, individual surgeon, should do what is comfortable doing safely at that point of his career, with the individual variables being the degree of experience, the individual skill set, acquired or congenital, and also the individual temperament. Some surgeons are more conservative as a temperament, some surgeons are more aggressive. So what are the suggestions? A less experienced surgeon should stick with extradural techniques at the beginning of his development. And if he wants to become a Chiari expert, ideally, after a certain amount of mastering, should level up over time as the experience accumulates. And there are going to be people who are going to have a more steep or a more flat, learning curve. ultimate goals for people who are, who have above 1,000 numbers of surgeries. You should master all techniques, all the nuances, in adapting to each anatomical variant, tailoring the individual technique to the anatomical needs of the individual patient. But this, again, is for level of experience that, as we're going to see in a second, is not going to be able to be replicated that much in the future. So, to give you a personal journey, for my first 200 cases, I did not open the dura. Then for the next 700 cases, I opened the dura and shrunk the tonsils. And then above my 900 case, I started resecting the tonsils, which is the maximum amount of aggressivity on the tonsils. Then from 2011 until now, not only I resected the tonsils, but I did it without a duroplasty. So, and my last cerebrospinal fluid leakage was on my birthday about 21 years ago. So what is the likelihood for an experience of this kind to be done to be replicated by many other people nowadays? Not a lot, because right now, as we're going to see, there's been a fragmentation of the Chiari surgical experience. Regarding the last version of the surgery, again, numbers game. We tried this new technique in Beijing and in New York. They started first, so they had more than 100 cases of this version. I had more than 150 cases. There were 1,500 and I had 180. And the complication rate out of the practice was extremely low, as you see here. But again, we were starting from a respective base, the Beijing group and myself, which was already 1,000 cases deep at that point in my career. So once I saw that the more aggressive the surgery was, the better the results were, not only about the shrinking of the ceilings, but about the clinical results, the degree of intensity of the improvements in the headaches and years. So, by the way, I became a crusader. And for many years, I started saying, oh, wait a second, don't you see that doing the surgery more aggressive gives better result? And then something hit me, and I said, you cannot really force or preach this thing on everybody like a berserk crusader. You have to be a little bit, a little more easygoing. So right now, I'm more like the dude. It's your opinion, man, or whatever you decide to do and you're comfortable to do. Now, years ago, up to the point that I was starting growing in this field, there were not many centers in which Chiari malformation surgeries were performed. Yes, many neurosurgeons were doing it, but the bulk of the neurosurgical activity was done in a very few centers. So Los Angeles with Dr. Betzdorf, New York with Dr. Mirarat, Iowa with Dr. Menezes, etc. And then if you fill the list. Then recently has been a fragmentation of the Chiari experience, and that's been due to a number of different reasons, including the politics and the economics of university centers. So now, what was concentrated in a few centers, and it was allowing, young punks like me to accumulate a big experience, this reality has been fragmented. So, for example, in the New York area, right now, there are 5 Chiari centers or institutes, or in my case, a bodega. So if that has been fragmented like this in the Chiari, in the neurosurgical world of New York alone, you can multiply that by a factor of 100, and you're going to realize how many Chiari centers are in the United States alone. Another problem, which is good, but also has a negative connotation, is that of over-reliance on technology in these days. So there's been a lot of biological glues and and things which have not invaded or pervaded, but have been applied to neurosurgery in general, but have the risk for a training, your neurosurgery in training, to be a place in which you over rely on. Okay, so I don't have to close the door up taking half an hour. I can do just a 5-minute closure and then I put the glue on it because it's going to work. Guess what? It's not going to work that well. Other problem is training residents. Everybody started at a certain point. And in academic institutions, one of the main missions is to train the next resident. So as a trainee, you're the resident, you have to start. As a trainer, you have to take a little step back and allow this guy to play and to learn. That means that every year there is a new batch of guys who are going to start learning their Chiari skills before moving to another technical challenge. And that means that every year there is a reset and there is a guy who's Chiari virgin who has to train again. So that means that if you're the professor of that Chiari university, yes, you're going to have a lot of numbers done, but a lot of the work or a part of the work has been done by ever-changing residents. So you're not going to be under the gun doing from the first cut to the last stitch. Now I'm in France. I was in Paris until 2 days ago. Now I'm landing in Normandy. And, one of the mottos of the French Revolution was liberté, égalité, fraternité, and égalité means equality. Now, I wish that we were all the same, but there are some people with the enormous and almost inhumane level of technical skill that I will never get in my life. So to assume that all the surgeons, even after a ton of experience, they're going to end up in the same endpoint is very unrealistic. So these are the titans I showed before. But if you notice one thing, with the exception of Dr. Oro, who looks much younger than me, and Dr. Yu, all of them, the top five, the first five, they're no longer practiced. Dr. Menezes is towards the end. Dr. Frem passed away a short while ago. We really miss him. But what you notice here is a generational exchange, and these are all the people who were having a lot of experience, above 900 cases, and 3 of them above 1,100. So it means that there's an end of a generation in which the Chiari experience was concentrated numerically, and they were having the advantage, the opportunity of, okay, something doesn't work today, I'm going to try again tomorrow or next week. Now the numbers are more diluted. So if it is true on one end that there are way more papers about Chiari during the course of the last 10 years than there were in the decades before, because the proliferation of scientific journals, is also true that the case series have been shrinking as a level, as an effect of the fragmentation. So we hope to see the next generation to come up in many disciplines, the next generation that brought a higher level of productivity, a higher level of new records, new achievements, etc. Here for the Chiari experience is a little bit contradictory. It looks that and I'm making a political statement, maybe somebody is not going to be in agreement, but my personal impression is that the message which has been not forced, but pushed, suggested to the new generation of residents in many academic institutions has been actually a step back from what it was 20 years ago, in the sense that many academic institutions which are prestigious are pushing the extradural technique for Chiari as if not the gold standard, the go-to technique. And that is going to, probably hold back some talent from following the steps of Dr. Batzler and Dr. Mirov and Dr. Menezes, who were definitely more aggressive than extradural alone. So, bottom line, this is the sum of what's my current opinion about this. Everybody has an individual path to the Chiari, to how to perform Chiari surgery, and right now more way hands off than what I was until 5-6 years ago, when I was trying to push on everybody, what I was seeing, which is if you push on on techniques which are more aggressive, you're going to get better results. But I understand that you cannot get on better techniques without a long list of cases behind your back, under your belt, that right now, with the fragmentation of the Chiari experience, are going to become less and less likely. Okay, I'm done.